Well, to discuss this, we're joined by a lawyer and public affairs analyst, Henry Ekine. Mr. Ekine, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's my pleasure to join you this evening.
You're welcome. Now, Governor Fubara did not have any other choice than to obey the Supreme Court ruling, did he?
Yes, the Supreme Court is the final court in our legal system. It is final, not because it's infallible. That is to say, it's not because they are not capable of making mistakes or entering judgments that may be dissatisfying to parties. But whether you're dissatisfied, it does appear that we've come to the end of the road in the legal system. So the governor and then the government of Rivers State even has expressed their dissatisfaction with the outcome or with the decision of the Supreme Court, but they have no choice but to abide by the orders of the court.
And talking about making mistakes, was the local government election conducted in the state on October 5 last year a violation of the Constitution and Electoral Act?
Yeah, if you ask me personally, I would say that the 36 states of the Federal Republic of Nigeria have for themselves the State Independent Electoral Commission established pursuant to the provisions of the Constitution. And the respective states' houses of assembly have made laws pursuant to Section 7 of the Constitution with respect to local government administration, including the composition and structure of local government. These are provisions of the Constitution. It is in that regard that houses of assembly have established the respective Electoral Commission law. So in Rivers State, you have the Rivers State Independent Electoral Commission law. And that is the principal legislation that I believe and I think should coordinate or guide or provide for the conduct of elections into local government council. It is not the Electoral Act, with respect. However, even if it is required that the voter register to be used in any election in any state, howbeit council election, shall be that voter register compiled by INEC, it meant that the responsibility or involvement in INEC in any local government election ends at the point that the voter register to be used shall be that has been compiled and made available by INEC. But I think I'm also yet to get the judgment and then the order of the Supreme Court as considered. So like I said, the Supreme Court is the final court. The justices of the Supreme Court, with utmost respect to them, but I am a lawyer, and then in the legal profession, we can review judgments when they are passed. There have been attempts to review judgments and decisions of the Supreme Court. It's not the first. So I would have thought that in considering the propriety or otherwise of the conduct of election in the local government, it should be on the basis of the local government law of that state or the Independent Electoral Commission of that state. And that is why after the election tribunal was set up in the state by law. And then the law is that the trial tribunal of the state, as set up by the chief judge, will consider complaints about the election. And then you have the appellate tribunal as well. I understand and I know that this issue arose pre-election, but whether the All Progressives Congress could question the procedure for the conduct of local government election based on the provisions of the Electoral Act, I think as a scholar and a constitutional scholar, I would also study further and then also study the judgment of the Supreme Court.
Okay, now we understand that all these stem from the defection of the state's 27 lawmakers, including Martin Amaewhule-led, the Speaker. But then, what is the position of the law as regards political defection in Nigeria?
Oh, great. The issue about the local government that we just finished has nothing to do with the 27 former lawmakers in the Rivers House Assembly and their defection. That's important to state.
Now, I'm actually looking at, I'm looking at the political tussle and upheaval that we've seen play out in Rivers State. So I'm pulling it from what had happened as at the time that we saw some members in the State Assembly defect to another party.
Absolutely. So then the position of the law, the provision of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria with respect to vacancy or defection, as the case may be, of any House of Assembly in the state, in any of the 36 states, is Section 109, subsection 1, paragraph G. And then, of course, it goes on. I would also mention subsection 2. And then the purpose of that section, or the intendment of the drafters of our constitution, is that we have to cure a mischief where before then there used to be, if you like, every morning, afternoon, and evening, legislators will be cross-carpeting or leaving political parties, platforms that sponsor them into the House to other political parties without consequence. They call that the requirements for qualification for election in our constitution include being sponsored by a political party. So when that mischief had to be cured, we had the provision of section 109, subsection 1, paragraph G, to the effect that you don't unduly abandon the political party that sponsored you to that house and then cross to another. Even in expressing your right that you shouldn't do so. The implication is that you do that, you lose your seat automatically. That's the clear provision of the Constitution. Even when some have argued that there is a proviso, the proviso is to the effect that only where there is a splintering or a division in the political party that sponsored you. Now let's fast forward to decisions of the Supreme Court. This matter had come to the Supreme Court not once, not twice. And the Supreme Court of Nigeria have actually entertained and determined clearly the effects of such defection pursuant to section 109, subsection 1, paragraph G, that the effect is automatic and mandatory that such legislator will lose his seat. The Supreme Court has also explained clearly what the splintering or the division that the Constitution envisaged in such a way that if at all the defector is claiming that his defection is justified, the Supreme Court has clearly established what that purported division or splintering would be. So the argument here is that in the case of Rivers State, the 27 former law members are not in doubt that they defected, because it was the valid proceedings of the Rivers State House of Assembly on the 11th of December 2023, without prompting, without anybody instigating them, even when they intended to do that, they were the ones that called the entire media in this country to the proceedings of that house that day, and it was valid, presided over by Martin Amaewhule-led. And the respective members, these 27 or the other 26, clearly wrote to the Speaker about their leaving the People's Democratic Party to the All Progressives Congress. That is the defection. The Speaker read out these letters and himself taking the same action. So it meant that the concept or the action of defection had taken place. Beyond that, they had other activities in Port Harcourt and elsewhere that they confirmed their defection, including swearing to an oath in the proceeding in the Federal High Court that they also filed later, that they had actually defected from the All Progressive Congress to the from the People's Democratic Party to the All Progressives Congress. So with all of these, they had ceased to be members of the Rivers State House of Assembly. They were the ones who would have to go to court to say their defection was justified.
So that means the Supreme Court's ruling retaining these lawmakers is not right, technically.
Now, but let me state something before I probably suggest whether it is right or not. The Supreme Court has not determined the appeal before them or any of the appeals. There are other appeals before the Supreme Court, however. Any of the appeals that is in connection or in the semblance of the issue of defection and the fate of the 27 former law members. The Supreme Court has not determined that.
Okay.
The question that the Supreme Court had to answer in affirming the decision of Justice Joyce Abdul-Malik of the Federal High Court was with respect to the presentation of appropriation bill before a Rivers State House of Assembly that was considered at that time by 4 persons or 5 persons as the case may be. So suffice it that the justices of the Supreme Court, we are looking at a file different from the other file that would have to do with the defection, which has not come for judgment. I have said that in proceedings in courts, a judge does not go on a voyage of discovery of his own on the wide sea, seeking to answer a question that is not before him. So it means that if the Supreme Court has not decided, and I understand that that has been deferred, the judgment has been reserved on one of the appeals that may have a semblance in that issue. So I wouldn't quite say that the justice erred in terms of asking Martin Amaewhule and the other 26 members to resume sitting. They could do so with respect to that particular action that originated in the Federal High Court that has gone to the Supreme Court. Just like I have analyzed Justice Omotoshaw's case, which was purely about the fear that the National Assembly was going to take over the proceedings of the Rivers State House of Assembly principally. And then Martin Amaewhule went to court to seek the order of court to restrain that. So, but that matter went on until Omotosho delivered judgment in January of 2024. So even if he ordered that Martin Amaewhule and his other colleagues were the legitimate House of Assembly to present appropriation bills to,
all right,
for, just as Abdul Malik.
All right,
then,
Eric,
those processes were filed.
Yeah, I understand. We might not be able to.
So the issue of defection, I think they will give justice to that, and that will not be surprising if it turns the tide at that time.
Okay, we might not be able to stretch the conversation further than this, but then thank you so much for your clarification, Henry Ekine, on this matter on the news.
Thank you very much. Always my pleasure to be on News Central.
Of course.